Quer que testa, Bruno? Se você quer que testa. Yes.
Good morning, friends. How are you this morning? Thank you for being here. We're going to start one more gospel in this beautiful house. We are very blessed and happy to have all of you here. Also, the ones that we don't see with our physical eyes, but the house is full of people today. And we are very happy to be here. So, we always start reading a message from this book, Happy Life. And we selected the same that we read in our preparation earlier in Spanish. And in Portuguese, we are going to read the one this morning. It says, never pass up on an opportunity to be helpful. It's not just with money, an important social position, or personal influence that you can help. A kind word provides encouragement and works wonders. Words have built civilizations as much as they have led people into war and destruction. Use words to help, motivating the fallen to get up, to get back up, those who sleep to wake up, the mistaken to make amends, and the violent to calm down. Speak kindly and softly, becoming a loyal microphone in the service of the good. And with this beautiful, beautiful message that is an invitation to all of us to take the opportunity, innumerous opportunities in our lives, to help others and ourselves, and to use that everything we have, our words, they are very powerful. Let's use them always to the good of ourselves and the others. So let's pray together to start the gospel this morning, inviting all of you. Let's elevate our thoughts to God. Dear God, thank you so much for your love, your caring for all of us. May we be very help us, God, understand your laws so we can live them in our daily lives. May we be very thankful always, Father, for everything we have in our lives. And we thank our brother Jesus for all the teachings, the kindness, and the love that was brought to us more than 2,000 years ago. Also thanking Dr. Bezerra de Menezes and all spirits that prepares this house to receive us this morning and every single day. Thank you, good spirits. May we fulfill our house with love and care, caring one to another. Be, be very, very helpful, helping each other and loving each other every single day. Amen. So we thank Suzana for being here this morning, coming to help us, to bring us her studies on who are your enemies. So you're very welcome in this house always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm so enchanted with this environment and how beautiful everything looks. Amazing. Actually, I took a picture. I'm gonna send to my people. Let's see how we can improve. Be inspired by Bezerra de Menezes. Um, okay, so today we are going to talk about. This is the topic. Who are your enemies? And the reason I put this title is because Jesus said for us to love our enemies. But sometimes we say, well, but I don't have enemies. So does that mean that the higher spirits wrote that to somebody else and not to you? Because the gospel was written to each and any one of us. When we read the gospel, we shouldn't be thinking of anybody else. We should be thinking the following way. This was written to me. How does that apply in my life? So if you don't know who your enemies are, you might disconsider an entire portion of the gospel because, you know, it wasn't written for you. So my job today is to prove you wrong, that it was written to you. I'm going to try to do this kindly. Um, let's see, how do I, okay. So in order to do that, we're going to use the gospel, the Spirit's book, and also some of the concepts that come from the work of Joana de Angelis, merging a little bit of the spiritual psychology with the gospel. This is this lecture is actually the final lecture of a number of lectures that I did prior to this one, building to this particular moment. So I'm going to review a few key concepts that will help us to put everything together for today's lecture. Um, so some of the key concepts is the idea of God, which usually you think of God as something that is outside of you. So it's important for us to remember that God is in us, is within us. We carry God within ourselves. A lot of times when we say, I'm going to pray to God, when you say, I'm going to pray to God, the frame that you have is a God that is out there somewhere. You don't realize that God is within you. So a lot of times, instead of seeking God outside, what we need to do is to connect with the God within. So that is a little different way to see, to feel, to understand, and to approach God. Not as something that is outside, but as a potential, as the essence of actually who we are, as a resource that lies within us. The concept of selfishness is a very key concept for anyone who is trying to make it better in this life, morally speaking. Because the Spirit's book in question 913 tells us that selfishness is the root of all the problems and imperfections that we have. So, in what does that mean is that in any problem that you have in your life, in any limitation that you have, difficulty that you experience, uh, passion, whatever it is, you need to ask yourself, where is the selfishness? Which role selfishness is playing? We know this, we study this, but we don't actually bridge the knowledge into our day-to-day lives. How am I being selfish? How is selfishness playing a role? And then you can equate selfishness to self-centeredness, with you being at the center of everything. So That's an important concept. The other concept is the concept of good and evil. We learn with the spirits that evil does not exist in the way that we think about it. So in this particular lecture, I have a slide that has the sun, a tree, and then the 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 shade, the shadow of the tree on the ground. And the idea with this slide is, if you're looking at the dark area, right, and you try to eliminate the dark area is not real. Is the shade, is the shadow, right? It's the shadow in that case. Um, so if you want to make light on that spot, there's no point in fighting the spot, because the spot is only there because there is something that is on the way of the light. So if you want to eliminate the dark spot, you have to find what is blocking the light. Same thing with us. So if we are identifying that we are being extremely proud, envy, whatever it might be, the the work is not to eliminate that. That is a consequence. That is the dark spot. There is something within you that is blocking the light, your own light. So what is the source, the real source of that spot, right? So a lot of times the real source is within us, in our wounds, in our vulnerability, in our humanity. Because all these things, pride, being very an ambition that is out of control, and all these passions that are like excessive and they're harmful, they often compensatory mechanisms, psychological mechanisms. We're trying to compensate for feeling very small, for feeling very wounded, right? So we need to go to the source. Plurality of worlds is the same of in a way of plurality of consciousness. So we have different worlds inhabited, and they're inhabited by different levels of consciousness. In the planet that we are in, we have a level of consciousness that is still very close to the primitive, is still very instinctive. We react a lot more than we act. So the reaction characterizes our animal nature, very much in line with the paradigm of one life, a very materialistic paradigm. So this is the level of consciousness that characterizes our humanity. If you go to the Gospel chapter 3, we learn that in this realm of consciousness, evil prevails over goodness. Some people have a very difficult time identifying that in themselves. Say, but I'm not killing anyone. I'm not stealing. So so it's very important. If the spirits are telling us something when we are studying, we should be reflecting and thinking, how is that? Because again, I swear it was written to you, not to anyone else. So if it says that evil prevails over goodness, when we are studying, we need to stop and to think, how is that? Where is the evil present in my life? And if you go back to the selfishness, you are going to see that it's very connected with this concept, right? I think last time I was here, I did say something like this. But for instance, if you are driving and you are in a hurry, and someone is in front of you and the light turns green and the person is on the phone, you honk, completely irritated because you're trying to get to work on time. But if the next day you left home with plenty of time, and now you're on the light looking at your emails, and someone behind you honks, you say, what's wrong with you? This is the evil, in the sense that we are unable to see the world and the circumstances from the eyes of the other. We are completely self-centered, okay? And in a world where each one of us is completely self-centered, that is evil, because in the worlds that are more advanced where good prevails, right? We have a much, much greater awareness of the other. So that's how we read these and we understand this. When we are very deeply hurt by someone's behavior, for example, right? What makes us vulnerable to be so wounded is because we are at the center of the equation. How can you do this to me? So we lose sight that the other one who is hurting is someone ill, someone who needs help, someone who's asking for help. But we are so self-centered, we're so stuck in our own selves that we lose sight of the spiritual need of the other, and it becomes about us. All right, so self-discovery is a key component. So again, we're not going to go forward if we don't understand who we are and where we are. Another important concept is the concept of transformation versus taming evil tendencies. When we talk about transformation, inner transformation, it's different than taming our tendencies. So, for instance, I can be extremely, extremely angry, and I can choose to speak in a very calm way. So, I can say, "Oh, my dear brother and sister, I totally understand you." And inside, I want to strangle that individual. Okay? So we do that. We all do that. So what are we doing? There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you understand that because you're behaving in a kind and loving way, you're not transformed. Okay? Now, you may say, "I'm pissed. I am angry. I want to kill this person, but I know that if I scream, if I hit, this is not going to help, right? On the contrary, it's going to make things worse. So I'm going to tame my tendencies. I'm going to keep myself under control, not to make things worse. But now, if I want to transform myself, I need to understand, why am I so angry? What is causing this rage within me? Where does it come? Am I feeling diminished? Am I feeling ashamed? Am I feeling that I don't belong? Am I feeling unworthy? So those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves so that we can actually, and once you gain awareness of what is causing, that in itself is transformative. So it's an important understanding the difference between taming and transformation. And then the last concept is passions, which I'm going to address now. So passions have a providential utility. That's in Genesis chapter 3. And in question 908 of the Spirit's book, we learned that passions are like a horse that is useful when controlled, but dangerous when it does the controlling. And there is a comment by Kardec where he says the passions are levers that increase human power tenfold and help them fulfilling God's providence. All passions have their principle in a sentiment or need of nature. So it's important that we understand the concept of passions as being uh, a natural feeling. It's a sentiment or need of nature. So it's natural and it has a providential purpose in our lives. So passions work increase our power so that we can actually fulfill our job. So it's a good thing if it is under our control. And I put here kill versus tame because we're going to think of passions as an energy that, when it's again under our control, can be used in constructive ways. But when it's outside of our control, it becomes what we know as vices. It is the same energy, okay? So the energy of anger is the same energy of assertiveness that can be very constructive and educational. So it is the same energy. So if we have an energy that is being destructive, that became a passion out of control, the purpose is not to kill that. The purpose is to tame and to transform. So what we call our vices, um, it's not something that is bad and should be destructed. Rather, is something that needs to be understood and redirected. redirected so that that same energy can now be used to fulfill God's providence. Okay, so that's an important concept, because a lot of times we're going to hear and we're going to feel that we should kill that vice. Well, that vice is an energy that's not being well managed. So we don't kill the energy, we redirect, we channel the energy in the right direction. Okay, so that's also an important concept. Okay, so the evil that we're going to deal today is vengeance, which is a noun that means the act or the desire for revenge, a punishment inflicted in retaliation for an injury or offense, retributive punishment, payback, reprisal, retaliation. So that fire was set as an act of vengeance. So this is the passion that we're going to be thinking about today. Okay, so we're going to look at passions. We're going to link that to self-discovery, to awareness, to analysis, and how do we apply this in our day-to-day. So when you guys leave here today, you have a sense of, okay, should talk about all these philosophical concepts. What does that mean on a day-to-day? And I will say that after doing this lecture for a few times, I did experience in my life a situation where I was like, after being tormented, my own lecture came to me and really helped me to kind of reset myself in a very positive way. So I hope can do the same for you. But let's start with, do you have enemies, right? So answer in your minds if you have enemies or not. And we're going to go to the gospel and read the gospel to identify what is in love your enemies, by understanding what love your enemies to cue us whether we have enemies or not. Okay, so in chapter 12, item 3, it says that to love one enemy means holding neither hatred, rancor, nor desires for vengeance against them. It means forgiving them unconditionally and without ulterior motives, which is hidden motives, for the evil they caused us. It means not setting up any obstacles to reconciliation. It means wanting the good for them instead of wishing evil. It means rejoicing instead of despairing for the good that reaches them. It means extending a helping hand in case of necessity. It means abstaining either in word or in act from anything that might harm them. Finally, it means repaying the evil with good in everything with no intention of humiliating them. Okay? So if we read this definition, we start to suspect that we might have an enemy here or there. First of all, which one of us has a clean heart with no rancor or resentment at all? I mean, some of us, there's two type of people in the audience usually: the ones who are aware of the rancor and the resentment, and the ones who are not aware, but we all have them. So you might be in one or another group. Now, I don't seek vengeance against people. Okay, so maybe let's make it a little bit more concrete. If you have a disagreement with someone at work, or a friend, or a family member, and the family member calls you and you look at the phone, the name, and you say, I'm not going to answer. You just put an obstacle in the place of like communication and reconciliation. I have done that many times. No, I'm not ready. Now you're going to wait for me. Now you're going to sit with your anguish. Have never done that? Right? So the point is that, or for example, when it says abstain either in word or act from anything that harm, have you ever been upset with anyone and then you go to somebody else and talks bad about that person? Well, you are not abstaining from, we should silence, we should not be talking. When we are talking, we are hurting that person, whether we realize that or not. So yes, we are not carrying weapons and killing people, but we can kill with words, with sentiments. And a lot of times we do carry the desire for vengeance, and we'll do things that, so recently I had an employee that left after a conflictual situation between the employee and myself. I'm the boss, and I was like, you know, what should I do in this situation, right? So how should I handle the situation at the very end? Should I just be silent? Should I, And then I start thinking, that would not be taking the higher road. That would be a little revengeful. I have power, so I can use my power to manipulate things. I did end up sending a nice email and doing the right thing, I think, as much as I could. Um, but so when we are living consciously, we are observing all our attitudes, and we will become more aware, and aware that you can have someone who is your friend and who at any moment can become your enemy, in the sense that you will have a lot of feelings and you want to get back to that person, sometimes more overtly than others. Sometimes we are more aware than others, right? Sometimes the revenge is subtle, okay? When we cancel someone, that can be quite revengeful. Um, it continues on the item vengeance. If they do not seek outright revenge, they nevertheless harbor rancor and a secret desire for evil. Yeah, I mean, I don't wish that person any bad, but you know, God will take care of her, right? So you're not saying that from a place of like compassion, right? There is a desire for revenge. You just delegating the revenge to God, whether you realize that or not. Because if you are in a place of true compassion, you're gonna actually ask for God's mercy for that person, right? But that's not what we do. We say, okay, and we feel good about it. We say, oh, no, 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 I wish her all the best, but life is gonna take care of her. Well, that is what I call the spiritist revenge, right? We delegate the revenge to life, to somebody else. Um, in fact, those who indulge in this deadly and blind passion almost never seek revenge openly, right? So we're not openly doing things. However, more often than not, they put on a hypocritical appearance, hiding in the depths of their hearts the evil sentiment that animates them. When their hatred does not reach such extremes, they attack the enemy's honors and affections. They do not recoil at slander, gossiping, talking, and their perfidious insinuations, skillfully sown under the four winds, grow larger along the way. Cowards who avenge themselves like this are 100 times guiltier than those who go straight to their enemies and insult them in their face. Jesus Christ. Did you remember reading this before? That's the gospel. You have to read it again and again and carefully, and always remember it was written to you. So if it's here, and given our level of consciousness and where we stand in the evolution, it's for us. So we really need to pause and to think. And let me say this: there is no shame in being where we are. What prevents us from looking at this and bringing home is because we often feel less because of that. We are where we are. This is our level of awareness. We can pretend that it does not belong to us, or we can take responsibility aligned with a desire for growth and humbleness, and say, yes, I am a being who belongs to a world of trials and expiations, characterized by spirits who are rebellious to the laws. This is who I am. But knowing that this is who I am, and this is a step in the scale of evolution, of progress, what can I do to live more consciously and to take responsibility to what is mine, and to do the work that life asks of me? That's all the life wants from us is humbleness and responsibility. Take home what's yours and do the work. Um, so with that, who are your enemies? So we identify that love and rancor can coexist. Now we're going to look at a path to forgiveness. Not forgiveness as a God's order, something that we must do, but forgiveness as an outcome. Here we have it's a philosophical and emotional posture. It's the outcome of self-knowledge. So hopefully in the last 20 minutes, we'll be able to come to this place where we're now ready to forgive. Not because in the gospel, you're never going to find a sentence that says you must forgive. Mm-mm. So we're not going to forgive because there is an order, because the speaker is telling us to forgive, because God is telling us to forgive. But we're going to get to forgiveness because we understand these key concepts and align and together with the work of self-knowledge, forgiveness is going to be a natural result. Let's see how. So first of all, again, with the identification and self-knowledge, how do I seek revenge? So we need to unpack the strategies, actions, and fantasies tied to retaliation. Which are the fundamental beliefs that sustain my desire for revenge? So when you seek revenge, right? Um, when you cancel someone, when you turn your back, when you don't answer the phone, when you talk bad about someone, you're taking justice in your hands. You're making it personal. You believe that because you're feeling pain, the other person should feel pain too. You wish that, whether you are aware or not. And also, there is a belief that forgiveness is associated with weakness, right? Maybe not so much in the spiritist movement, but in general. Now, I love this. Revenge lives in the wound. So you gotta find where is the wound in you, right? That is fueling the need for revenge. How do I seek revenge? Again, through action or fantasy. Sometimes it's in our thoughts, silence or sabotage, righteousness of or rage. So again, identifying ways in which we seek revenge. Um, when you go into a silence, right? You really close the doors to any communication to the other person. That is revenge. It's very painful to be when you want to reconcile and the other person doesn't give you any room and you're left with your anguish. Which are the fundamental beliefs that sustain my desire for revenge? I must restore balance. Hurt must not go unpunished. If I forgive, I lose. So the transformational steps, again, so we're going to go back to some of those key concepts that I talk about, which is going to be tame our tendencies, our impulse, and our behavior. We're going to understand the feeling, what fuels the rage, and then guide passion towards service. So use the fire, don't be burned by it. So this is the idea. So let's take an example on revenge. What feeling drives revenge? So when I'm seeking revenge, there is a feeling behind that desire, which is the feeling of what? What are we seeking to establish when we're looking for revenge? Anyone? Justice. Justice. Okay, so that's very important because remember that passions, they are natural. So the passion, the need for justice is natural and is divine. That's why we cannot kill revenge. The passion, the energy is an energy for justice. We have to have that inside ourselves. It's divine. Otherwise, we would walk in this world, right? Look at all the injustices that are happening and not be touched by it. So we must nourish within ourselves this energy, an energy of justice. But revenge is the energy of justice that has gone wild, okay? Has lost its higher purpose. So you don't want to kill the energy, because the energy in itself is divine. You just need to redirect this energy to the right place. Does that make sense? So some key elements, again, when you were seeking revenge, you were centered in yourself. So selfishness is at the core. Going back, so I'm going to be pulling those elements that we talked in the beginning. When we think of passion, we did talk about passion. Passion here, the energy is the desire for justice. So is the horse, is the energy. But when you multiply that by selfishness, which is the self-centeredness, now you have the evil tendency or vice that is vengeance. Okay? So the direction that is being given to this energy is an ego-centered direction. In that perspective, in this frame, the other now becomes my enemy. So who is in charge of justice? Under this paradigm, who is in charge of justice? I am. I am. Okay? So that's what we see in the mediumship meetings. The spirits come, right? Seeking revenge, the obsessors, right? And we tell them that this is not the way. And yet we are doing that for much less, much less, because the stories that we hear in the mediumship are stories that I honestly don't know if I could forgive, right? To be very honest. But we are telling them to do so. And yet, on a day-to-day, we must identify ways that we are seeking revenge. And we're spiritualists, but this is the paradigm that usually prevails because of our level of consciousness. So let's look at a more uh, concrete situation, betrayal. And I'm going to be talking here betrayal at a little bit of a marriage level, but we experience betrayal in many different levels between friends, in the family, right? So it's a very painful feeling when you feel betrayed by someone. So in this perspective, um, it exposes the reality of the failure of the relating. And when you have the ego, an ego perspective, so what you're going to do, how you're going to act in face of betrayal is by pointing fingers, is by blaming, is by being the victim, is by feeling the unfairness and putting yourself higher than the other. So that's usually how we deal with betrayal, right? How could you do that to me? Okay. But we have as a spiritists a different paradigm. We have different understanding. We know, for example, that under the law of justice, nothing that happens to us is unfair. So that's something important. Every single challenge that we face in life, every single difficulty has a purpose. Um, it's not a punishment, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for learning. We shouldn't be asking ourselves, why am I going through this? But rather, what do I need to learn from this? So it's a very different way of approaching any difficulty that come in our way. Rather than, because when you stay on the why, you are stuck in the victimization. And a lot of times, you know what? You will not know the why, at least not immediately, not in this moment. But the what for, yes, the what for can tell us a whole lot. So anything that comes in our situation is to help us with our spiritual needs, and nothing happens without God's permission. Not even a leaf falls from a tree without God's permission, right? We know those things, right? So who is the other? When we bring the spiritual perspective to our thoughts and to our hearts, then we ask, who is the other? So the other in this perspective is no longer my enemy. Rather, it is an instrument to my growth, an ally in my spiritual evolution, not the enemy. So in this moment, if I can pull this awareness to my day-to-day living, what am I doing? I am taking my ego from the center. I am displacing the ego from the center, and I open space in myself for God to speak. for the essential, for the clarity, for the light to shine. I'm moving the obstacle. And now I also realize that I too am capable of hurting others. So who am I to judge and to put myself in a higher position? So from the perspective of betrayal, right? So if you are self-centered, the self-centered person, okay, sorry, I got a little shy. So when you look at the betrayal, um, we can be in a position where we can move from the center. We can recognize that we too are small. And instead of focusing on the victimization and pointing fingers, we can focus on our own path of spiritual growth and ask ourselves, what is it that I did in this situation? Because there's always two persons and there's always a contribution. So if we're thinking about a marriage, for example, you may say, what did I do? Or maybe, what did I not do? Because sometimes we are too busy in taking care of our own things. Sometimes we forget to value the things that the other person values. Sometimes we have been too absent. You know, it's not that we did something, but we didn't do what's also necessary to nourish and to be fully present. Which mistakes did I commit? Was I present enough? Was I attentive and respectful? So from this perspective, we now no longer at the center. We're able, of course, any betrayal will be hurtful, and I'm not diminishing or dismissing the pain, but I am offering a different perspective, one that actually you leave that place where you're just blaming and pointing fingers to say, which part did I play in this, right? What is mine? And then with that, if it is a marriage, we have choices, several choices. You can dissolve the marriage and look at the other as your enemy. You can dissolve the marriage and become friends with your ex. Um, you can continue the marriage and accept the other. So in this position here, you say, okay, I'm going to continue my marriage. This person is really, he needs my help or she needs my help. And I'm going to continue because I have something to offer and I can help this little person who is below me. So you continue the marriage, but in a very in a different position, in a hierarchical position. One is higher and the other one is lower. Or you can continue the marriage with the understanding that each other is a daily tool for growth because you both fail, limited and small. And then you choose to repair and to grow together. So I told you that this in particular I use in my life recently, where in my marriage, I had a situation where I was hurt. And then as I'm dealing with my feelings, I realized that I too, we're not very different from one another. Maybe our limitations might be expressed in a little different way. And then I got in touch that, I was able, literally, and it feels like that, I was able to leave the center. I was able to connect with my level of consciousness. We're all in this world. We're all the same. We all have tremendous difficulties and limitations. And then I felt literally the displace where I'm not higher. I want to believe that I'm higher and better than, but I'm not. But I'm not. And that allowed me to go back to my real place and say, hey, that was hurtful, but you know what? I'm capable of similar things. Let's continue together because we need one another. So that is reconnecting at a horizontal place as opposed to higher and lower. So this is the beauty of spiritism, because in that moment I could make my partner, because anyone can become your enemy. anyone can become the other, in the sense of, I am not you, I am better than you. How did you do that to me? But spiritism is so beautiful because it teaches us those concepts that if we can truly, truly grasp mentally and then pull to our heart and emotions on our day to day, it's transformative. And it transforms the most important thing in our lives, because you can have everything, but the gist of happiness is in relating. If you don't have a healthy relating, if you don't know how to relate, how to forgive, how to connect, you can have everything, but you will have nothing at the same time. So the most important thing for us to do in our daily lives is to invest in our relationships by investing in our own selves, by understanding our own wounds and what drives us. So if you are in a place of humbleness, and if you connection with the God within you, you might even be able to say, can you tell me how my behavior has contributed to yours? So now we're really having a dialogue here, right? It's a very different perspective. And again, friendships. A lot of times, friendships, in the spiritual center is a place that a lot of times will have conflicts. So we need to take all these key elements that I talk about and bring it to our day-to-day relating to see how they can help us, so we don't make our friend here at the spiritual center into an enemy. So it's an inner choice. You have the God in you, right? I'm starting to wrap up here, who calls for justice and fairness. So it is, again, a divine sentiment. What we're going to do is we're going to tame our passion. So we're going to control the ego, not see the other as an enemy, understand that the purpose of incarnation is evolution, and we're going to make an effort to tame our tendencies. So that's, we identify the feelings, we understand that we have an enemy, even if it's for that moment, right? We understand that we have this need for justice and fairness. We understand that we're having feelings that need to be under control. And then we got to go to the last step, which is the self-knowledge. That is the true transformative step. So once you channel your energy and attention to knowing yourself, the desire of revenge fades away, because now you're focusing on what matters, right? You're no longer seeking revenge because someone told you to, as a result of an effort to be a better person. You're not seeking revenge because now you are understanding and you're in touch with the truth, which is your true place and position in the universe. So the idea here is, again, it's not an effort that you're making to be a better person. The transformative process doesn't come from an effort to be something else. It comes from an effort to know yourself, to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The truth as God's laws, but the truth, your own inner truth. Who are you? Where are you in the present moment? The more you can connect with the truth within you, this connection is transformative in itself. If you can pull the key elements that Spiritism offers and works in this laboratory of the psychic of emotions, this work in itself will lead you to forgiveness. You will forgive not because someone told you to, because you realize that there is no other thing to do but to forgive. Because you understand your smallness. You understand your real place in this universe. You get out of this illusion of this this illusion that we live in, that we are better than the other. And once you can be centered in your real place without losing your value, because I can say, I am small, I am still a spirit who is in a planet of trial and expiations. but yet I remain, I have been, and I will always be a child of God. So it's very important because we can diminish ourselves without losing our intrinsic value of divine beings. Only when you're not connected with your value that lowering yourself becomes shameful and painful. When you are connected with your value, you can say, yes, I am small. Just like a child who is on second grade is not ashamed of being on second grade and not being in graduate school, because this is just the place where she or he is supposed to be in that moment. They don't feel that they are less worthy because they are on second grade, in the way that we shouldn't feel less worthy because we are where we are. All right, so that's my last slide. I'm going to finish with that from the gospel. For believers, and especially for spiritists, the way of seeing things is different because they consider both the past and the future, between which their present life is only a dot. They know that because of the very destiny of the earth, they must expect to meet up with the evil and perverse people, that the weakness of which their target makes up part of the trials they must undergo, and their elevated point of view renders the vicissitudes less bitter, whether they come from things or other people. If they do not complain about their trials, they must not murmur against those who serve as their instruments. If instead of complaining they thank God for putting them to test, they should thank the hand that furnishes them the opportunity to prove their patience and resignation. This thought naturally disposes them to forgiveness. Beautiful, no? So we are in a world we should expect to meet up with the evil and perverse people. And that is part of who we are too. We can be perverse at times. So again, it's not somebody else, it's for you and me. Do not murmur against those who serve in instruments. We are all instruments. Someone is instrument for our patience, for our forgiveness and compassion, and we are instruments for others. We are all together on this. But if we understand this, if we are able to look at things from a higher level, right, this thought will naturally dispose us to forgiveness. So, what is justice and forgiveness? Justice and forgiveness is the desire for justice is real, but justice and forgiveness will help us we look to ourselves. And the first person that we have to forgive and where justice needs to take place is right here. So by taking care of ourselves, by loving ourselves, by straightening our paths, that's how we do justice in the world. Not by wishing evil to anyone else, by wishing for us to be better, wishing for us to be connected to the goodness that lies within ourselves. As we take care of ourselves, as we straighten our paths, we are also investing in a future of less pain, and we are actually allowing for justice to prevail in ourselves in first place. Thank you. All right, my dear friends. So I hope this was inspirational for you as much as it was for me. And we will end our meeting this morning by elevating our thoughts and feelings to God, to our Master Jesus, and thanking both for the opportunity that we had to be here to share these thoughts, the gospel, this beautiful doctrine that really gives us a lot of tools, understanding, and knowledge to create the courage to roll up our sleeves and to get to know ourselves, love ourselves, recognize our beauty, and in doing so, be able to love others as well. We thank you for the presence of the spirituality the good spirits, the mentors of Bezerra de Menezes, to the presence of each one of you here today. We ask the good spirits to continue to guide us, to help us to be more in touch with God at all times. Bless the works of this divine place, each one of us, our loved ones, our homes, and we end expressing our deepest gratitude for this place, for this opportunity, for being here today, for our lives, for everything that we have, but most importantly, for everything that we are. Thank you, and so be it.